And it's time now for Perspective, and my guest today is Matt Yuki, who's an investigative journalist who has been based in Colombia for the last 10 years. His new book, 40 Days in the Jungle, Behind the Extraordinary Survival and Rescue of 4 Children Lost in the Amazon, it tells the story of 4 children who were discovered in the Colombian jungle in June 2023, 40 days after being the only survivors of the plane crash. I have the French translation of the book here, which is being published tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt. This was a story that made world headlines back in 2023, and it certainly captured the imagination of people all around the world. But what motivated you to delve deeper and write a book about it?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that, like many people who are following the story during the search, I was very relieved when the children were found and very surprised as well. I think one of the things I realized when I began researching is that this story, as well as a survival story, had been a mystery. And I really wanted to look at the family themselves, the region where they came from, and the way that the search developed and the ways in which the children were eventually found, because I thought that would tell a wider story, not just about the family in question, but also about the indigenous people who live in Colombia's Amazon region.
And can you describe the research process? It obviously involved quite a bit of travel and quite a bit of contact with indigenous peoples within Colombia.
Yes, so at the beginning, when I first started researching the book, there was a lot of interest around the story. I had to sort of start from scratch, build up relationships with members of the family, also the search teams. And at the time when I started, it was really almost impossible. It was very difficult to get to Araraquara, which is the town where the plane had taken off from. I had to actually wait for a ceasefire between the Colombian military and the rebel guerrilla groups who were operating in that region in order to be able to make the trip down to that region, which involved going on a cargo plane, with beers and bits of household appliances in the hold. And then I had to get a 2-hour motorized canoe upriver to visit where this family had come from.
Now, are incidents like this, like plane crashes and people getting stranded in the jungle, are they common in Colombia?
Colombia does have there's been quite a few high-profile air crashes in Colombian history. There have been planes which have flown into the side of mountains, plane which has been blown up by narco lords. Most recently, I think 2018, there was the plane which crashed outside of Medellin, crashed into the jungle and took an entire Brazilian football team with it. I think, one of the issues in the Amazon is that these regions and these populations are pretty poorly served by commercial flights. There's only, one every 2 weeks. And so you have a lot of small charter planes like this Cessna, which crashed, and cargo planes, which form the main sort of route of communication for these communities with the rest of the country.
Now, the shadow of recent Colombian history hangs over the narrative. Is this a very Colombian story, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so. And that's, again, survival stories are always great because, people are fascinated by them, I should say, because, it's a very obvious life or death situation. People like to think about, how they would survive, put in the same position. 40 days in the jungle is obviously a very long period to exist, with very limited access to food. But I really found in the research of the book, by talking to the families, understanding the pressures they were under to leave the jungle, the reasons and motives for their leaving, and the very limited options available to them. I think it is, there will be other Amazon communities in places like Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil that are very isolated as well. But Colombia in particular, because of the geography, it's very hard to get from the Colombian Amazon to the main cities of the country.
Now, you mentioned food and water. They're the most obvious issues for people in that situation. But what other challenges did the children face?
Well, it was very wet there, so it rained. You speak to the rescue party, and they'll tell you that it was raining almost non-stop. So obviously that increases the chance of illness. There was leishmaniasis as well, which is a sort of skin-eating virus, which two of the older children both suffered leishmaniasis and had to be treated subsequently. Many of the search parties as well had to deal with that. There's lots of dangerous animals in the jungle. The children had an encounter with a snake. Other rescuers also had their own encounters with wild animals.
Is it fair to say that the children, being from an Indigenous background, or at least Leslie, the oldest of them, that they were equipped with survival skills that most people elsewhere in the world just wouldn't have?
I think that's almost said that. Well, that is certainly true. In speaking both with the children's grandmother and their father, it's quite clear that, and also just with other families in the Amazon region of Colombia, these children are brought up to, from a very early age, not see the jungle in the same way that you or I might see it as a green hell in European literature and film. A place that's disorienting and claustrophobic. I mean, this is where they naturally spend their time. They're very accustomed to finding fruits and knowing which plants are poisonous or where animals might live, how to find water and that kind of thing. So this ancestral knowledge that comes both from the grandparents and the mother, and also on the father's side, the father had taught the kids how to fish with various different methods. So one thing I learned was that Leslie, when she was younger, loved to fish with her friends, for example.
And did you yourself learn things you didn't know about the jungle and survival methods while writing the book?
No, I was quite fortunate in that I was well looked after while I was down there. At no point did I feel that I was at risk of getting lost. I mean, I tried a lot of local fruits. I also ate a local grub called mohohoi, which is a sort of fat grub which is fried up. So more than anything, it was the food was particularly interesting, and I saw how the local women would make this mil peso fruit. There's a palm tree in the jungle called the mil peso, and its fruit were the fruit which Leslie essentially fed to herself and her siblings for those 40 days. And what I realized is that this fruit as well, when mushed up and combined with water, creates a sort of milky liquid, which many people in the Amazon use instead of breast milk. And so that was one of the reasons why they were able to keep the baby Christine alive. She was only 11 months old at the time of the crash.
And finally, would you give yourself a shot at survival if you found yourself in a similar situation?
I don't think I would be. Maybe I've learned a few things. I might be able to find a mil peso fruit, and I might be able to try fishing. I would be marginally better than I would be before I started out in this research. But I still think it was an amazing feat of survival and a true testament to the resourcefulness and resilience of those 4 children.
Thank you very much for that, Matt Yuki. And Matt's book, 40 Days in the Jungle, Behind the Extraordinary Survival of 4 Children Lost in the Amazon, is published in English on the 10th of April, and the French edition is out tomorrow. Thank you very much.